It's in the Jewish interest, it's in humanity's interest that whites experience a genocide. Until white children are burned alive, white women raped, mutilated, murdered, and all white men who have not been slaughtered watch powerlessly as their people are terrorized. Only then will mankind be on a more equal footing, ready to discuss white privilege and the apparent chip on the shoulder that minorities have. Rabbi Ishmael Levitz.
Donc pour ce faire, il faut tout simplement supprimer les frontières, détruire les nations, détruire les races, détruire les religions. Autrefois, au XIXe siècle, ce projet était incarné par le projet communiste. On sait que Karl Marx, qui était à l'initiative de ce grand projet communiste, était lui-même d'une famille juive. Aujourd'hui, on nous parle de l'homme enceint, on nous parle du transgenre, on nous dit que l'identité sexuelle n'est pas innée, mais elle s'acquiert. Donc ce n'est pas du tout le fruit du hasard, on retrouve toujours cette obsession égalitariste, ce fanatisme égalitaire qui entend anéantir, détruire toute différence, araser toute spécificité, tout particularisme, toute tradition chez les êtres humains. Mais quand tout sera détruit, qu'est-ce qu'il restera? Eh bien, il restera les Juifs, qui eux auront conservé leur spécificité, leur culture, leur tradition, et qui seront, paraît-il à ce moment-là, selon eux, reconnus par tout le monde comme le peuple élu de Dieu. Voilà leur projet.
So there's a second thing in that black box. An unrelenting stream of immigration. Non-stop. Non-stop. Folks like me who were Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America, from then and on, will be white European stock. That's not a bad thing.
It's very clear that the Jews want to exterminate the European race. Richard Coudenhove Kalergi, who is the father of the European Union and who was funded by the Jewish bankers Rothschild and Warburg. Now, this man wrote a book called Praktischer Idealismus in 1925, in which he stated that the Jews are a master race and that the Jews can only assume the throne of rule over the world by weakening the European race, and that the means to weakening the European race would be to dissolve all the European nations, destroy all their cultural heritage and their national traditions, and replace that with the European Union, and then to invite in Africans, Middle Easterners, and Asians to dilute the blood of Europeans through miscegenation to the point where they became a degenerate mixed race. And then at that point, these people would no longer have any sense of nationhood, and the ancient Jewish messianic prophecies of world rule out of Jerusalem, with Jews maintaining their nationhood and their national status, it would fulfill the Jewish messianic prophecies that the Jews could then rule the world. And this was completely in line with what Nikolai had written in 1917 and has manifested itself recently with the invasion of immigrants from Africa, from the Middle East, and from Asia into Europe, America, and Australia. And they are deliberately setting about to genocide the white race and destroy all sense of nationhood and of national heritage and national culture in each of our nations.
I speak of the death of the white race, the complete removal of all means of reproduction of the so-called Aryan race. Men, we now control the destiny of this race. It is now time to make sure the white race becomes extinct through miscegenation and having a virtually zero birth rate. We have all enjoyed the vision repeated all over this world every day of the last white children playing with little dark children and knowing that they are being set up for their eventual destruction. We can ruin the ancient pure bloodline of an Aryan child by convincing him or her of the altruism of begetting interracial children. We must expose the race mixing of the urban centers to the suburbs and rural areas of this country. Abe Foxman, ADL President, August 25, 1998, New York. The goal of abolishing the white race is, on its face, so desirable that some may find it hard to believe that it could incur any opposition other than from committed white supremacists. Make no mistake about it, we intend to keep bashing the white dead males and the live ones and the females too, until the social construct known as the white race is destroyed. Noel Ignatieff, Harvard professor, 2002. Forbid the whites to mate with whites. The white woman must cohabit with members of the dark races, the white men with black women. Thus the white race will disappear. Our race will rule undisputed over the world. Our superior intelligence will easily enable us to retain mastery over a world of dark peoples. Rabbi Emanuel Rabinovich, Council of European Rabbis, Budapest, 1952.
It is true, unfortunately, and I think this needs to be frankly admitted by Jews all over the world, that there are, without doubt, Jews involved in those movements and those organizations, very often NGOs, etc., who promote this phenomenon of third world immigration into the Western countries.
One of them is Barbara Spector, a former American who made Aliyah and then 10 years ago, with the help of the government of Sweden, set up a non-denominational institute of Jewish learning with the Greek name of Paideia, here in Stockholm. She believes the current wave of anti-Semitism in Sweden will pass and that Jews have an important role to play in a country undergoing profound change.
I think there's a resurgence of anti-Semitism because at this point in time, Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural. And I think we're going to be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place. Europe is not going to be the monolithic societies that they once were in the last century. Jews are going to be at the center of that. It's a huge transformation for Europe to make. They are now going into a multicultural mode, and Jews will be resented because of our leading role. But without that leading role and without that transformation, Europe will not survive.
Barbara Spector and husband Rabbi Philip Spector moved to Sweden in 1999. She established the Paideia Institute in 2001 using taxpayer funds. She admitted her goal isn't to help migrants and refugees acclimate, adjust, and assimilate to Swedish culture. Her mission is to ensure and establish Talmudic Jewish supremacy, which is the clergy plan. Make no mistake, her goal is to destroy Sweden, Europe, and Christian nations by weakening the bloodline of white Europeans. Remember, Ishmael is the broom for Israel. Refugees don't occur by happenstance. There would have to be a crisis, a natural or manufactured event to displace millions. People en masse don't abandon their families, community, country, and culture for no reason. For that to happen, it takes.
Since the spring of 2014, an estimated 3.6 million African and Middle Eastern migrants, 90% of which were younger men under the age of 35, illegally entered the continent of Europe by myriad land and sea routes. This unprecedented event, precipitated and managed by the hostile liberal elite, then required continuous mainstream propaganda and NGO support for the native European population to willingly accept its continued demographic demise. The details have been researched so abundantly that there is no need to discuss them further. However, what has never been explored to any significant degree is how this costly billion-dollar international scheme was paid for, and how the poorest people on earth were somehow able to walk right into the nations of Europe, which often required cold hard cash, and in sums they simply couldn't afford. Firstly, how does a 20-year-old youth from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the average yearly wage is about $400, come up with some $2,000 or more to pay for the long trek across the African continent into Libya, then onto a makeshift boat that could ferry him to a European port of call? Well, in short, someone gave it to him. The sum of $2,000 to a young African in any of the sub-Saharan regions is the equivalent of about $100,000 for a similarly aged, unmarried young person living in America. Young people from these areas simply do not have that sort of cash. There have been numerous reports of NGO trucks and black unmarked vehicles operating in the vicinities of well-known pickup points along the early stages of these migration routes. And although these culprits, handlers, and exchangers of currency have been difficult to source, there is no question that large quantities of money are being funneled in somehow. The total operational transport cost to all migrants who illegally entered Europe over the past 5 years is estimated to be about $8 billion. This was paid mostly in cash. Such an alarming total exceeds even the GDPs of some of these countries put together, and there is absolutely no way that all of this money came from third world pockets. So, where did it come from? About a year ago, the infamous globalist hegemon, George Soros, admitted to divesting some $18 billion of net worth into a number of his NGO platforms, and in particular, the Open Society Foundation, which is the umbrella entity or Politburo that operates hundreds of globalizing progressive organizations that now encircle the planet. This had been done over the previous 2-year period. The money essentially disappeared for all intents and purposes, as no one cared to audit the so-called charity, and it had become so vast that no one would have even known where to begin. This largesse would have no doubt been enough to cover monies owed at the ground level for the operational costs of the migrant flooding of Europe, although the NGOs supporting this already had the existing financial flexibility to aid in the day-to-day movement of migrants, including the use of modern transport vessels sailing in the Mediterranean, many of which, interestingly, owning Israeli shipping registrations.
When we're talking about offshore money, when we're talking about political subversion, when we're talking about collusion, I wonder whether we're looking in the wrong place. And I say that because George Soros recently gave Open Society, his organization, which of course campaigns for free movement of peoples and supports supranational structures like the European Union, he recently gave it $18 billion. And his influence here and in Brussels is truly extraordinary. Open Society boast that they had 42 meetings last year with the European Commission. They've even published a book of reliable friends in the European Parliament, and there are 226 names on that list, including yours, sir. I thought you'd find this interesting. We even had last week Mr. Verhofstadt lobbying on behalf of Mr. Soros at the Conference of Presidents in a battle that is going on with Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary. If we're going to have a debate, and we're going to talk about full political and financial transparency, well, let's do it. So I should be writing today to all 226 of you, asking some pretty fair questions. Have you ever received funds, directly or indirectly, from Open Society? How many of their events have you attended? Could you please give us a list of the meetings of all the representatives, including George Soros yourself? And I think this Parliament should now set up a special committee to look into all of this. And I say that because I fear we could be looking at the biggest level of international political collusion in history.